The morning began like any other day, with sunlight painting the clouds in shades of gold and red. People went about their lives, children heading to school, workers filling trains, and markets buzzing with voices. No one realized that within hours everything would change. The first sign came when the satellites started to fail. Communication networks flickered, screens went black, and warnings began to appear across military command centers. Scientists thought it was a solar flare, but soon, the orbital defense system stopped responding too. Panic spread as people looked up and saw the sky glowing with a strange, deep crimson light. It was not the sun. It was something far worse. Then the sky burned. Long streaks of fire tore across the heavens, raining down death on cities below. Explosions erupted in every corner of the world. The great cities of Earth, Beijing, New York, Berlin, Nairobi, were destroyed within minutes. Millions perished before anyone even understood what was happening. Humanity's strongest weapons could not stop the assault. The attackers were not human. They were the Karjul, an ancient and merciless alien species whose ships blotted out the stars. They came without a word, their dark vessels shaped like jagged knives moving with silent purpose. Their weapons were beams of searing energy that turned buildings and oceans to ash. Humanity fought back with everything it had, but their missiles and lasers barely scratched the alien hulls. It was a slaughter. Governments collapsed. The global defense fleets were shattered. Those who survived watched helplessly as Earth itself began to die. The once blue planet was wrapped in smoke and flame, the atmosphere choking on dust. From the lunar colonies, the survivors saw the horror unfold. The home that had raised all of humanity reduced to a burning graveyard. For a moment, silence filled the void. The Karjul vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving only ruin behind. Humanity's heart had been ripped apart, but even in despair, something inside the human spirit refused to break. The survivors gathered in secret outposts, old mining stations on Mars, broken colonies around Neptune, and hidden research bases deep in the belt. They had lost their world, but not their will. They remembered their families, their homes, the laughter that once filled Earth's skies, and from that grief rose a single burning desire: vengeance. The leaders of the surviving colonies came together in a cold chamber under the surface of Titan, where they swore an oath. Humanity would not die in silence. They would rebuild, they would rise, and one day they would make the stars themselves tremble. From that vow was born Project Vengeance. The goal was simple, yet impossible: to create a ship powerful enough to challenge an empire. Engineers and scientists worked in the shadows, gathering what technology they could salvage from the wrecks of human ships and even fragments of alien metal. Each day they labored, breathing life into a dream that was greater than any weapon, a symbol of hope. Across the colonies, whispers spread about the plan, and for the first time since the fall, people dared to believe again. The day the sky burned would never be forgotten, but it would not be the end. It would be the beginning of Earth's vengeance among the stars. In the cold orbit of Titan, where sunlight was faint and shadows stretched endlessly, a giant took shape. The colossal ship that floated there was unlike anything ever built by human hands. Its frame was made from black alloys salvaged from destroyed alien vessels and reinforced with human ingenuity. Every piece of metal carried the pain of loss and the strength of hope. Commander Alara Voss walked through the vast corridor still under construction, her boots echoing against unfinished decks. She was a soldier forged by tragedy, one of the few who had seen Earth fall and survived. The memory of the red sky and the burning cities never left her mind. That memory became her fire. She had made a promise to the dead planet she once called home. She would make the stars remember what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. Her team was small, but extraordinary. Chief Engineer Raoul was an old miner from the belt, his hands scarred from years of labor in vacuum suits. He could turn scraps of metal into functioning engines, and he worked tirelessly, barely sleeping. Then there was Lieutenant Juno, the best pilot humanity had left. She had survived a Karjul ambush years earlier by flying her damaged fighter straight through an energy storm, earning the nickname Ghost Wing. Around them worked hundreds of survivors, scientists, soldiers, and wanderers, people who had lost everything but refused to give up. They built side by side, breathing life into the creation that would become humanity's revenge, the Retribution. Days turned into years, and the Retribution slowly came alive. The ship was 10 kilometers long, with armor thicker than any ever made, and engines powerful enough to break through time and space itself. Inside, human hands built weapons that could pierce through mountains, railguns the size of skyscrapers, plasma cannons that burned brighter than suns, and shield systems copied from alien technology. It was a miracle born from desperation. The work was dangerous. Several times, explosions ripped through the construction bays, killing workers and damaging what they had built. Each time, they buried their dead in silence and returned to their posts. They were not building just a ship. They were building a promise. Alara became the soul of the Retribution. Every crew member respected her, though few dared to speak to her directly. She led with calm authority, her words always simple but powerful. To her, this mission was not just war, it was redemption. Humanity had been broken, scattered, humiliated. Now it would rise again, stronger than ever. In the darkness of Titan's orbit, among the silent rings of Saturn, humanity was reborn not in peace, but in steel and fire. When the final engine core was sealed, and the fusion drives roared for the first time, the vibration shook every heart aboard. The sound spread through the ship like thunder, deep and endless, as if the universe itself was waking up. Alara stood on the command deck, watching as blue flames erupted from the thrusters. For the first time in years, the crew cheered. Some cried openly. Others saluted the stars where Earth once shone. The Retribution was ready, a weapon and a symbol, a floating fortress built from the ashes of humanity. Alara looked out at the endless black of space and spoke quietly to herself. They thought they ended us, but this is where humanity begins again. The stars reflected in her eyes like sparks of vengeance waiting to burn. Across the colonies, people whispered of the ship being completed, and hope spread like wildfire. The day the Retribution was launched into the void, it wasn't just a moment of triumph. It was a message. The galaxy would soon remember the name of the species that refused to die. Humanity was coming, and this time it would be the stars that trembled. When the Retribution finally left Titan's orbit, it moved like a shadow through the void. Silent, immense, and invisible to enemy eyes. Its first mission was simple in words but deadly in purpose: to strike back. The target was a Kargil outpost on the far edge of human space, a base used to control the trade routes and monitor the last surviving colonies. For years, the Kargil had ruled that region like gods, hunting down any human ship that dared to cross their path. Now for the first time, humanity was coming for them. Commander Alara Voss stood on the bridge as the ship exited warp, her crew tense and ready. Outside, the massive viewport stretched a field of stars and, at its center, the black spires of the alien station surrounded by a fleet of warships. They were completely unaware of what was about to hit them. Alara's voice was calm but carried steel when she gave the order. Weapons free. Strike hard and vanish. The first volley came from the ship's railguns, massive rounds of metal accelerated to near light speed. The projectiles slammed into the enemy cruisers, tearing through their shields and armor in explosions of blue and green fire. Plasma torpedoes followed, launched in perfect formation, streaking across space like burning comets. Within seconds, the peaceful darkness of the void became a storm of destruction. Alien ships broke apart, their fragments spinning like dying embers. The Retribution moved through the chaos with deadly precision, its massive hull reflecting flashes of light from the burning wrecks. For the first time since Earth's fall, humanity was not running or hiding. They were fighting, and they were winning. Across the ship, the crew worked as one. Raoul's voice echoed through the engineering decks as he diverted power from the life support to the main guns, shouting orders over the roaring hum of energy conduits. Sparks rained from the ceiling as overloaded circuits exploded, but he didn't flinch. "Keep those guns alive!" he yelled, his hands blackened from smoke. In the hangar bays, Juno led the fighter squadrons into battle, weaving between alien fire with unmatched skill. Her small craft danced like lightning, slicing through enemy lines and crippling their engines. The human pilots fought with fury and courage, many of them flying ships that had been patched together from scraps. They knew they might not survive, but none turned back. The aliens tried to regroup, firing beams of white energy that sliced through the darkness. But the Retribution's new shields absorbed the blasts, shimmering like liquid light. Alara stood tall on the command bridge, her eyes locked on the tactical screen as she guided her crew through the storm. "Target their command ship," she said. "End this." The Retribution's main cannon charged, glowing brighter and brighter until it unleashed a single massive blast. The alien command vessel exploded into a silent bloom of fire, pieces scattering like glowing dust across the void. When the light faded, only debris remained. The outpost was destroyed. For a long moment, no one spoke. The battlefield was filled with drifting wreckage, the remains of both alien and human ships. The victory was real, but so was the loss. Dozens of their own had died, their ships torn apart in the fight. Alara felt the weight of it press down on her. She knew this was only the beginning, and that the enemy would soon come for them with greater fury. Yet as she looked out at the stars, she felt something she had not felt in years. Pride. "They think we are weak," she whispered, her voice quiet but firm. "Let them learn what humanity becomes when we have nothing left to lose." News of the victory spread across the colonies like a spark in dry grass. For the first time since the fall of Earth, humanity had struck back. Across stations and settlements, people lifted their heads and dared to hope again. The retribution had done the impossible. Humanity was no longer broken. It was awake, and it had teeth. The Karjul Empire had faced countless species before, but none like this. The age of human vengeance had truly begun. As months passed, the retribution became a ghost in the galaxy, striking fast, vanishing before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Each attack carried the same message carved into the wreckage they left behind. For Earth, the Karjul, once confident and cruel, began to fear the darkness between stars. For somewhere in that endless void, the humans were waiting. Alara Voss and her crew had turned survival into art, their ship into a legend. But legends come at a price. The more victories they won, the harder the enemy struck back. The Karjul started sending entire fleets to hunt them. The humans were few, the aliens were countless, and every battle drained them of fuel, supplies, and lives. Still, they refused to stop. To Alara, there was no retreat, only forward, only vengeance. Their most brutal fight came near the Vega system. The retribution had arrived to destroy a Karjul supply convoy, but instead found itself surrounded by a full battle group, 20 warships in tight formation. The moment they exited warp, the enemy opened fire. Streams of plasma cut through space like burning rivers, slamming into the Retribution's shields and shaking the entire ship. Alarms screamed, decks trembled, and lights flickered, but the humans didn't falter. "Lock targets and return fire," Alara commanded, her voice steady even as the ship groaned under the impact. The railguns roared, firing round after round that pierced through alien armor like thunderbolts. Explosions lit up the void, turning the battle into a storm of light and death. In the engine bay, Raoul was everywhere at once, shouting orders, patching ruptured lines, and rerouting power. When a coolant pipe burst, spraying white vapor across the room, he didn't move aside. He sealed it with his bare hands, ignoring the burns. Above, Juno led the fighter squadrons again, flying through chaos that no computer could track. Her squadron cut through alien interceptors like fire through paper. Though one by one, the fighters vanished from her radar as their pilots fell. She refused to retreat. "For Earth," she whispered each time she pulled the trigger, each time her ship dodged another beam of death. Despite their courage, the humans were being crushed. The alien flagship arrived, a monstrous vessel, nearly 10 times the size of the Retribution, covered in spiked armor and glowing runes. Its main cannon charged, creating a sphere of white energy at its front. When it fired, the beam cut through space itself, vaporizing 3 human ships instantly. The Retribution barely survived, its shields failing, its hull glowing red from heat. "Evasive pattern Omega," Alara ordered, gripping the console as sparks rained down. The great ship twisted and rolled through the debris field, its engines howling as it evaded another beam by meters. "Target their weapon core," Alara shouted. The gunners aimed everything they had, missiles, railguns, and plasma torpedoes, at the same point. The final torpedo hit the alien flagship's weapon, just as it began to fire again. For a second, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then the flagship exploded in a blinding storm of fire, its wreckage scattering like a dying star. Silence followed. Half the human fleet was gone, and the Retribution drifted through the glowing remains of the battlefield. The crew was exhausted, wounded but alive. The victory felt hollow, yet it meant everything. On the bridge, Alara stood among the smoke and broken screens, her uniform scorched and torn. She looked out at the wreckage of both fleets, a graveyard of heroes and monsters, and whispered softly, "For Earth." Her words carried across the ship, reaching every survivor who still breathed. That battle near Vega became a legend told in every human colony. It proved that even when outnumbered and surrounded, humanity could still fight like gods of war. The Karjul began to change their tactics after that, moving more carefully, speaking the human name with caution. The Retribution had become more than a ship. It was a symbol of what humans were capable of when they had nothing left to lose. Each scar on its hull told a story of defiance, and each survivor aboard carried the same fire, the promise that no matter how dark the void became, humanity would never kneel again. The plan that lay before Commander Alara Voss and her remaining crew was the most dangerous they had ever faced. After months of fighting and surviving against impossible odds, the humans were ready to end the war in one final terrible strike. The Karzul still ruled the stars, but their empire had begun to crack. Dozens of their fleets had been destroyed by the relentless attacks of the Retribution. Yet Alara knew this endless battle could not continue forever. Humanity had one ship, one chance, and one weapon powerful enough to change the balance of the galaxy: the Sol Lance. It was a weapon forged from the energy of a dying star, capable of wiping out an entire world in one blast. It was both a miracle and a curse, the last creation of humanity's desperate brilliance. The plan was simple: take the Retribution straight into the heart of enemy territory and use the Sol Lance to destroy the Karzul homeworld. The crew knew what this meant. It was a one-way mission. The journey to the enemy's home system took weeks. The void around them grew darker, the stars fewer, and strange signals filled their sensors. The Karzul had fortified their capital with thousands of warships and orbital defenses. To reach the planet meant flying through a storm of fire. Yet no one on board hesitated. In the mess hall, the crew shared quiet meals, some writing messages to loved ones they would never see again. Alara moved among them, calm and determined, her presence steadying their fear. "We've come this far," she told them. "We finish this for Earth, for every soul that burned under their sky." Her words filled them with strength. Even if death waited at the end, they were ready. As the Retribution dropped out of warp near the Karzul homeworld, the enemy was already waiting. The sky filled with ships, a sea of black metal and crimson lights. Their formation stretched across the stars like an iron curtain. The human crew watched in silence, realizing just how small they truly were. But Alara's voice broke through the tension. "They took our world," she said over the intercom, her tone fierce and unshaken. "Now we take theirs. Let's remind them what humanity is made of." And with that, the battle began. The first wave of enemy fire hit them like a storm. Energy beams tore through space, shaking the Retribution as shields flickered. The ship returned fire, its cannons unleashing a barrage that shattered enemy lines. Juno led the last squadron of human fighters into the heart of the enemy fleet, her small ship darting through the chaos like a spark of light. Her voice came over the radio, calm despite the screams and static. "Keep going, Commander. I've got your back." One by one, her squadron fell until only she remained. When her engines caught fire, she turned her damaged fighter toward the largest enemy cruiser and rammed it head-on, taking both ships in a single explosion. In the lower decks, Raoul fought to keep the engines alive. When a reactor breach threatened to destroy the ship, he sealed the chamber himself, locking the doors behind him. His final words over the comm were steady and quiet. "Give them hell, Commander." The Retribution's engines roared back to life, carrying the ship forward through the wreckage of burning fleets. Alara's eyes burned with tears, but she did not slow. "For Earth," she whispered again, her voice trembling with fury and grief. Finally, the ship reached orbit above the enemy planet, a dark world covered in towering cities and glowing scars of industry. The Karzul fired everything they had, but it was too late. The Retribution's armor cracked, its decks burned, and its systems failed one by one. Alara stood on the command bridge, surrounded by fire and smoke, and gave her final order: "Fire the Sol Lance." A beam of white light erupted from the ship, brighter than any sun, piercing the heart of the planet. In seconds, the Karzul homeworld disintegrated, vanishing into dust and silence. The Retribution drifted in the aftermath, its hull broken, its engines dead, but it had done what no one thought possible. The Karzul Empire was shattered, their fleets lost, their leaders gone. Humanity had struck the final blow. The price was everything: their ship, their crew, their lives. But in that final moment, Alara knew it was worth it. The stars were quiet once more, and Earth's vengeance had been delivered. When the light of the Sol Lance faded, only silence remained. The Karzul homeworld was gone, reduced to dust drifting among the stars. The Retribution, once humanity's proud warship, now floated as a crippled shadow of its former self. Fires still burned across its decks, and its systems were dying one by one. Commander Alara Voss stood on the bridge, surrounded by flickering lights and smoke, her reflection visible against the shattered glass of the viewport. The planet that had once threatened Earth no longer existed, but neither did her crew. The bridge was quiet now, the voices that had filled it silenced forever. She had won, but the victory felt like ashes. Ilara walked slowly through the ruined corridors, her footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The air was thin, the lights dim, and the hum of life support weak and uneven. Along the way, she saw the faces of her fallen crew on broken screens, their last recorded messages flashing one after another. Juno's laugh. Raoul's quiet determination. The others who had given everything to make this moment possible. Every image cut through her like a blade, but she kept moving. She reached the observation deck, where the vastness of space stretched endlessly before her. The remains of the Karzul world glowed faintly in the distance like dying embers. Humanity had finally avenged Earth, but the cost had taken everything she loved. The ship's computer, damaged but still loyal, flickered to life beside her. "Commander," it said in a fading voice, "life support failing. Recommend evacuation." But there were no escape pods left. They had all been launched to save others earlier in the battle. Ilara smiled faintly, her voice soft but steady. "There's nowhere left to go, old friend. We did it." "That's enough." She placed her hand on the console, feeling the vibration of the dying engines. The Retribution had been more than a ship. It was a companion, a weapon, and a home. Together, they had carried humanity's fury across the stars. Outside, the stars shimmered faintly through the drifting debris. The galaxy seemed quieter now, as if mourning the end of both enemies. Somewhere far away, on the recovering worlds of humanity, signals would soon reach home. They would learn that the Retribution had completed its mission. Children would grow up hearing stories of the lone ship that defied an empire, of a commander who never surrendered, of a crew who gave their lives for a world they would never see again. Humanity would rebuild, rise stronger, and remember. Ilara took a seat by the viewport, the captain's log still recording beside her. She looked out at the glowing dust that once was the heart of their enemy. "For Earth," she whispered one last time, her voice calm and full of peace. The ship's lights flickered once more, and the engines finally fell silent. The Retribution drifted into the void, a quiet monument to courage and sacrifice. Years later, explorers would find the wreck. They would step into the silent corridors and see her sitting there, still in her command chair, the stars reflected in her eyes. They would recover the log and play the final message, her words carrying across the centuries like a ghost. "If you find this, remember us. Remember that humanity fought, not for power but for survival, and we won." The tale of the Retribution and Commander Ilara Voss would become legend, told wherever humans traveled among the stars. It would remind them that even in the darkest reaches of the galaxy, hope can burn brighter than any sun, and that sometimes the smallest spark of defiance is enough to change the fate of worlds forever.